Hey, what's going on? It's another episode of the Teel podcast, and like always, I have another great guest, Colton Barker. What's going on, man?
Yo, what's going on, Joseph?
I'm excited, dude. I know we've been wanting to talk for a while. This is gonna be fun.
No, for a long time. Yeah.
So you're an artist, right?
Oh yeah, no. I do art, and then I do a bit of I do oil paintings, and I do murals. That's kind of my that's my whole rack right now.
Yeah. What's it like to do art in 2025?
2025 with all the there's lots of there's a lot of political stuff going on, so like that's something that a lot of other artists might focus on, but right now it's more about me and my emotions, kind of what I've been going through recently, changes in life, stuff that's coming up. Obviously I'm going to be moving in summer, so like that's going to be a big...
Where are you going?
Going to London.
Oh, wow.
England.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like big jump, basically. Finally getting my associates done at Texarkana College, and then moving on to a somewhat small college. It's cheap. It's cheap enough for me to pay for them while I'm over in London and making connections over there. So like a lot of my art recently has been like a step for that, seeing how to advertise myself properly and how to make money, build myself while I'm over there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet that'd be cool to live somewhere else. Have you ever lived anywhere else in here?
That's another thing. Yeah. So it's going to be really, I've never lived, so I've lived outside of my house for over a month, but that was just down the road basically from my house. And longest I've spent away from it is probably only like 2 weeks, a little bit more than 2 weeks. And that was a long time ago, but it's going to be something different.
Yeah.
Especially with...
Is it scary?
A little. I was thinking that it wasn't going to be, but the thing is that like as much as people don't like living here, I found a home here. And so I really, really adore the people I've met here. And I'm going to miss being here, especially seeing everybody day by day. I'm trying to like make the relationships I have right now last while I'm over there, and they will, but it just hurts leaving a little bit. And
that's scary to go to the other side of the world.
Yeah, I know. Well, here's the thing. It's a big step and it's going to make me uncomfortable. That's partly why I'm doing it.
Yeah, you got to do that.
Exactly. If you're not facing like some massive hurdle, I'll either falter and I'll have to keep trying and get back up, or I'll slowly be trudging up back to basically in a state that works for me.
Yeah.
Once I'm over there.
Yeah, it's like working out at the gym. Like you don't grow without resistance. You kind of the more you can give yourself, the better chance you have of like emerging up as something.
Yeah, the way I always remembered it, that was something that got implanted in my brain because of a book series, or a book that my youth minister gave me, gave us to read. It was over at Fellowship Bible Church, and the name of the guy was Andy Tuttleby, and he gave us this book called Do Hard Things. And so I think about it a lot, essentially. And it was about these kids that had made I can't remember everything because that wasn't what stuck with me. Basically they built themselves up as teenagers, trying to essentially have as many responsibilities as possible, try to be more productive in their lives, basically prepare for adulthood before there was this marker of saying they've reached adulthood.
Right.
Yeah. So do stuff while you're youngest, because back in the day, you used to like start working in the factory at 12 years old and not, I'm like 16 or 17 and now it's time to finally get a job or go to college. Yeah, they didn't have that back then. So you wonder sometimes like just how much, when should I start actually doing stuff? And I've always kind of thought that, but I didn't really know my place. Like around that time, around 16, 17, when that was happening, I was still struggling with what I wanted to do. And I still have a whole slew of wanting to do other stuff, but art is where I found my first home kind of, and I'm kind of pursuing and going forward with that. And it's been good. And I think that's a good start, good home for me. I mean, this is kind of what I was built for, I think, in a lot of ways. But
if you're like me, you're gonna find multiple things more than likely.
Exactly. I mean,
I dove into this and dove into that, and I think it's like when you're creative, when you make art, you're gonna find, I don't know, you find out like everything is art, really. Like in a way, there's somebody with some regular job, but the way they do their job is almost an art in itself.
Yeah.
And as a creative person, you'll start to chase those different things, but we'll always have that love. Like for me, it's like music. That's the original love, but it's led to other things like podcasts and other things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like for me, it was eventually led down to biology and engineering. And so I liked both of those. But the thing is that there's also a way to like mix those two together. And I know we talked about speculative biology and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of goes into it. Basically, kind of figuring out how mixing the two together would get you like what it's called as biomechanical engineering. More specifically, not bioengineering, because that's more medical. That's a medical term more so now.
Yeah, that's what it says on our food.
Yeah, but kind of. Yeah.
No, it says it on the.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where the term everyone talks about it now. But that's why I say biomechanical, because basically it's looking at animals, seeing how they move, basically how their bones move. It's kinesiology. Do you know what kinesiology is? It's basically the study of the human body and how it moves, essentially. And so it also helps with prosthetics and things like that. But that's essentially what I would look at. But for biology in general, so like birds, mammals, like how things move, and then transferring that to a mechanical sort of aspect. So looking at biology for inspiration for, well, I guess robots nowadays, but like,
yeah, well, I mean, somebody looked at a bird. Yes, somebody looked at a bird and was like, "Hey, why couldn't we fly like that?"
Yeah, and there's lots of things about an airplane that people had to look at birds first to see how to do it.
Isn't that crazy that there's things like that, like, oh, wings on a bird, and they just naturally got it, or like, look at how our brains are thinking. You'd be
surprised though how many like intricate pieces there were to plane just to make them like work normally.
Right. Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. One of the original things I always mentioned when I was talking about biomechanical engineering was there was a problem with planes landing originally. And so they were having a hard time basically landing in a really stable way. And so they're like, well, this is a huge problem. We don't really know how to fix this. And so they're like, let's go look at birds. And so they noticed that there was this part of the bird on the wing that essentially helps stabilize it. And so they see that. And so they implement that into the wings, and then that fixes the entire issue, basically.
Wow.
It's hard for me to say exactly what it was, but it is that is a major part of it. And it's like, I wish I could say more specifically what it was, but it's something that I always remembered.
Yeah, that's cool.
You wouldn't have ever thought about it until you see it as a problem, and then you're like, okay, well, birds do it better. Let's see how we can fix it.
Like almost like a computer kind of mimics a brain. Like we think of how we think and store information and all that stuff. They probably was inspired. Okay, well, let's create a machine that kind of can think. Yeah, and that's how we get somewhere like AI or something.
Yeah.
Or
have you seen the robot that has like human brain cells in it?
Oh no!
There's a new robot that's somewhere in China. They made a robot with they put like human brain cells on the top of it, and then like put needles in it. I don't know how specific it was and how it worked.
Yeah,
but like they said, it learned faster than typical. It was lighter, less more energy efficient because it was probably made of organs and not a bunch of biomechanical pieces and junk like that. But it was more efficient, or better learned, easier, more creative. Yeah.
But dude, AI is getting scary. Robots are getting kind of scary.
Yeah, I know. I'm kind of scared of them a little bit. But like at the same time, I'm like, well, we're going to have to embrace it.
Because they're not stopping. We were talking about that before the camera started.
I can't stop it right now.
Yeah. And that's what I tell people. It's like, some people are like, oh, well, I just don't want to fool with it. And I say, well, unfortunately,
there's going to be the guys that do fool with it, and they're going to smack you in the head later.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
That's kind of the concept. Like you can choose to sit out of it, But it's like, it'll be like choosing to not get into cell phones early. Like the people that figured out how to use the internet or cell phones early, they had the advantage.
Yeah.
And now that's what it's going to be like for AI. That's why I've been dabbling in different ideas of like, that's why I use ChatGPT every single day. Cause it's like learning to prompt, learning to
I've been thinking about doing it for investing a little bit. Cause like that has always been, it's important. Investing is a good thing in general, technically, if you're not taking money out when people need it, but like it's supposed to be a good tool for giving extra money to people who are doing a business and they want to continue making stuff for that business and just want more money to make the things that will end up helping at the end of the day. So the people that get more money or get more investments are likely the ones that are doing the best in whatever they're doing.
Yeah, because they got the money behind them.
Exactly. But it turns people that want to fund it.
But then it turns into they loophole everything, and so now it's like a whole system of stocks
because of how it's programmed. Lots of ways people do it is they'll pull out money when when the whole economy is like just struggling, and that just means that people that need the money in order to like start funding the projects and stuff like that, they're just going to start slowing down. And then if they stay slow, they'll probably just crash. And it sucks because like there are probably plenty of really good ideas out there. And that's another thing. People don't always invest in stuff like that unless you're like a dedicated investor. You're just investing in the big stuff that kind of works.
It's kind of a sad thought to have is that there are so many, even art, there's so much good art. There's so much good music. There's so many good ideas. And some of them never see the light of the day because of something like no like funding.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah. For art, it's like, it's a whole field. It's a whole thing to worry about because there's different aspects of art too. So like you've got the commercial side of it, and then you have like the more mainstream stuff. So like the intros you see in like videos or stuff like that. Right. That stuff that's more just thought out, more methodical. Darlene did that before she the muralist. She did that before she eventually started doing murals around town and everything for TV shows. Like, I don't remember, like, but basically, like NBC or HBO, things like that. Like big companies, basically. Helped create TV intros for those. And then eventually got into murals and regular paintings. That's a different side of art where like you would call it contemporary, present day art, essentially is what contemporary means. Right. But that has an emphasis, especially nowadays, on essentially coming up with unique ideas and expressing. Right now, it's especially about not necessarily not thinking about the art, but letting the audience decide what the meaning is. And that's kind of bullshit.
Like just painting something and
stack a bunch. There's a video that someone mentioned to me. There's a video of a guy with a bunch of buckets of sand, and he just yanks out a string from the bottom of them, and they just fall over. That's it. And that's his whole rack. And I'm like, that's okay, cool. I mean, it's never been done before, and that's an important thing to realize is when it's not ever been done. That is something that is impactful. But when you're just like, okay, something that's never been done, but like I'm basically just doing it, and I didn't really think about what I wanted to do with it, or like I was just doing it because. Yeah, I saw
a post of a guy that sold that. This may be BS. There was a meme where it said that this guy sold a invisible painting for like $18,000.
I remember there was another one a friend of mine told me about that was from London, and he basically had a blank canvas, and he was commissioned for the piece by a museum or something, and he gives the piece to them, and then when they get it, it's just a blank canvas. Yeah. And he said the title of the piece was "Take the Money and Run." And now in that regard, that's kind of bullcrap, but I think that's art. I would say that's art because that's just being bold and still something that not necessarily has never been done. It's definitely done, but like you're going out of the way to say that, and I haven't heard anybody say anything like that yet.
Sometimes I see the paintings where it's just like splashes.
Oh yeah, paint,
that. And I'm like,
have you seen?
Is that all? Because like my son brings stuff like that home from kindergarten.
Yeah, well, some of it is important because like there's a difference between abstract. There's a difference between splashing paint and then having intent with your paint. So like one of my favorite artists is a guy named Jackson Pollock. Have you heard that name? The last guy that interviewed me said the same thing. But basically, he's known as the cowboy painter, kind of. But essentially, he's an abstract painter, famous guy, kind of. But he's an abstract painter, and you can't always notice it with his pieces. Like if you don't get it, like if you're just saying like, oh, abstract art's just like throwing splashes of paint. There's an importance to how he was moving when he did his paintings. Like each motion was, it's a method of, there's always going to be, when you're splashing paint, there's always going to be a bit of letting the brush do what it does. But there's also a method to how the person, the artist, is moving while doing it. So the consistency of how you're moving and the consistency of how it looks is an important part to an abstract piece. And that's a big focus for abstract in general, is just your movements personally. If you're not really involved in what you're doing with the abstract piece, it's not necessarily like a piece. It's just, there's no effort to it. You're just kind of just coming up with an idea and then like putting it out there.
Have you seen the ones where they have like it swinging? Like
yeah.
Swinging and
that's
stuff
what
like
I think
that?
about when I think about the ones nowadays. And those I don't. Some of them are they are art, but at the same time, it's like
they're science at that point.
People are doing that already. People are already doing it now.
Right.
You got to find out your own way of doing it. There is this guy that does kind of stuff like that. You know the broom? It's like the dustpan. Yeah. I've seen a guy pour out paint on it and then like splash it around on top of a piece, but then he adds a whole bunch of other stuff on top of it, essentially to geometric shapes and stuff like that. So it has that abstract element, but then it has all these geometric lines and airbrush effects onto the piece that makes it an actual piece and not just a bunch of abstract art.
Right.
A bunch of abstract splashes splooshed around on a piece of paper.
It's got to be very difficult to stand out as artists, especially with so many. I always associate it with music because I feel like that's kind of how I understand it. Oh yeah,
exactly. When you think
there's got to be so many musicians out there doing it. It's got to be similar with so many people painting.
You'd be surprised.
So many people. Or you think more people do music or more people do art?
Oh, definitely. Like nowadays, definitely more music, I would say. But also like hobbyists, I would say there's a lot of lot more painters. But like
they're just hobby.
But like, yeah, but I'd say more serious people, I'd say music is definitely a bigger thing. I mean, and looking for different things, especially like if you know what different music sounds like, you can identify what is coming from one person, what's coming from another.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like for me, I have I have a whole set of specific music tastes. So most of my stuff isn't decided by genre always. It's nearly every genre, but I specifically I have certain artists that I listen to. Some of them, I will say, some of them sound similar. And so sometimes you could get confused. But the thing is that it also depends on how many songs they have. And I can identify them eventually. Like you can tell the difference between some of them, but sometimes you have to look. And this is only for a specific type of artist. It's like the electric background noise that you hear in YouTube videos, basically. All that like chill vibe stuff, basically. I have a few of stuff like that, and those can kind of mush together if you don't.
Right.
You can still notice a difference between them sometimes. You just got to really listen to that.
How hard is it to tell, like, if you look at a painting, if you look at a famous painting right now, could you tell, like, who painted it a lot of the time?
I could tell. See, the thing is, right now, I don't always know names, but I could definitely tell you, like, I can tell you who's, like, what the significance of the brush, like, what's being done that makes it stand out. Specifically, I can tell you that those are the times. And I've literally guessed, like, the ones that I have guessed before. I've guessed a few by this guy named Ai Weiwei, and he's got a very specific. He's a sculpture guy, but he's from China, and I've seen a few of his pieces, and I just identified them as his before actually like seeing them, which is surprising because they were sculptures and they were a little bit harder to guess than art, like paintings and such. But you really just. Part of it is also the culture. So sometimes you look at certain types of art styles and things like that. So and there's things like Impressionism, Expressionism, realism. obviously. Abstract, that can vary, but it's really just looking at the piece and then deciding. Like if you, like the guy I mentioned, Jackson Pollock, if you looked at a piece, an abstract piece that kind of had some sort of consistent rhythm to it, but it looked like it was made by hand, you could probably say, oh, that's kind of like a Jackson Pollock piece because it's done by hand. It looks like it's done by hand motions and much more focused on what abstract is kind of supposed to be, which is just the motion of you and the brush. Besides that, there's just different styles. So like, I can't think of a specific other like reference, but you can identify what kind of things go into it that make it stand out.
So there's almost like genres of painting.
Oh yeah, for sure. There is. Yeah. No, that's what I was saying. Basically, there's Impressionism, Expressionism. Impressionism was eventually, that was what started after. So, you know, all the realistic Renaissance paintings and stuff like that. Eventually there was a transition to less real looking pieces. And that's kind of where things like cartoon, well, it's not where cartoons started, but this is that was kind of the very beginning of getting away from trying to be realistic. The realism wasn't always the thing. The Byzantines weren't always very realistic. They had mosaics and stuff like that, but realism in the Renaissance and then Impressionism came after that. And so you had started getting these pieces that didn't focus on looking as real as possible and started looking a little bit more generalized. The shapes, the faces weren't always as detailed or anything. It was just more about the piece as a whole, not about the and about the things that weren't just the faces and everything.
Right.
Yeah. About the background and what went into the piece all over the entire piece. And that's a genre in and of itself. There's also, obviously nowadays you have like digital art versus real art, and then you have sculptures and things like that. That all those could be considered their own genre, because especially for a contemporary artist, of fine arts contemporary artist, it would be you don't always just use a canvas. Sometimes you make sculptures. Sometimes you make sound-based stuff. Sometimes you make videos. It's really just a bunch of anything when it comes to art for like a fine arts student.
Do you think cultures now, do you think America overall has a style?
Ooh, an American overall style? Definitely. When you think about the Dr. Pepper mural that we have in town.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say that has a specific painting on the wall in that old style. I'd say if that would be an American style, kind of having those.
There's I'm big into Star Wars. A lot of people know this, but so there's a guy in Star Wars, a bad guy. His name is Thrawn. And he's like this alien from far away, but he's like a genius. He's like a super genius. And he's the blue guy over there.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So he, one of his things is that he's able to analyze art from people and know how to beat them, like militarily. And I always wondered, is that even, excuse me, is that even possible? I would say
that's definitely possible.
You think so? Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, because that can give you a leak into someone's, that can just give you a leak into how a person is not the demeanor, but how they hold themselves. But
even the society, that's what I'm trying to see. If you could look at a piece of American art and be like, oh, I know how the Americans react.
Oh, how an American would look. I wouldn't say in terms of iconography. So you get what I'm saying by iconography. Mm-hmm. Basically what's depicted in the art itself. You could definitely get an idea of if this was an American piece and what this person thinks.
Yeah.
What their opinion is, especially, I'm sure. But especially nowadays, because a lot of art nowadays can be severely sometimes political.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of political pieces, especially when there's a lot of unrest, which is going to be a lot more common right now. But you can tell when something's based, especially if it was about American media, there's probably a lot of a bigger chance that it's an American piece, because it's about something that's happening in this country.
I get you. So back to the AI before we get too far from that. Because we were talking before the camera started rolling. So let's get back into this. How do you think it's going to change the artist landscape, having AI being so?
Oh, did we not talk this on the camera?
Yeah, well, it'll be better if we just flow into it this way.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So, well, I was talking about I was mentioning how since there's a bigger focus on AI and everything like that, there's obviously a big focus on downsizing animation studios and things like that and replacing artists with AI, or that could be a big focus in the future. And so what I'm thinking is going to happen is there's going to be a much bigger focus on some artists eventually stepping out and creating smaller animation studios with a smaller budget, smaller teams, and that would creating just shows that are just as good as things that are coming out right now without AI, that are made by smaller teams. And because there's a lot more of them and it's a lot cheaper, there's going to be a lot more opportunities to make a living with a smaller team with a whole like animation show, basically.
Right.
And so I'm wondering if that may be where I eventually step into once I'm out of all the fine art stuff, because animation's where I'm wanting to end up.
That's where your end goal is.
That's kind of where my end goal is.
Yeah.
That would be my dream end goal, essentially. So like to help direct an animated show, essentially, especially the ones that I've got in my own mind, the stories that I have cooked up and everything. And so,
what type of animation do you like to watch yourself?
So for my inspiration, a lot of really, so like when people say like what inspires me to do my art and everything, I first and foremost like to mention this studio called Gainax. So that's the people that make Neon Genesis Evangelion. That, if you know what that is, one of the guys helped make Sailor Moon. But the one that
is it anime?
It's anime. This is anime. Yeah, this is that Gurren Lagann, and then maybe saying that wrong to some people, but that, and then there's two other shows. There's one called Fooly Cooly. That's my favorite anime, my favorite show. Period. And it's a cult classic, and it's very few episodes, especially the first season, which is really like the core of it. And then there's one called Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt, and that's a different topic, but I need to talk about that show in order to talk about my art style. Mm-hmm. So basically with Fooly Cooly, there was a bigger less emphasis on the, what would you call it? The corporate side of animation. So less focus on what the producers want and more focus on what the artists just wanted to do out of the heck of it.
Right.
And so the entire show, it was only 6 episodes. So like it was a somewhat small amount of work, but the artists were just basically doing whatever the heck they wanted. And for a story and everything, they kind of concocted this thing called Fooly Cooly. And that's what they did. It was just artist led. And I think that's incredibly powerful. And I think that shows in the work itself. And I think it's a powerful piece. It's like my favorite show. It's my favorite show. So like, there's a reason why
I have to go check it out. I never even heard of it. Is it in Japanese?
No, actually it's better. It's one of the best dubs you could ever watch.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's like Cowboy Bebop, or better.
Wow.
With translation, because it was not just transliterated. It wasn't just like translate the exact words that that were said in Japanese. It's translated in a way that American audience understand exactly what is being said.
Yeah. And then I noticed that on the dubs of like Dragon Ball Z, they changed like some of the...
especially with Dragon Ball Z and everything, like the ones that were made, like especially One Piece, I'm pretty sure had that problem initially with 4Kids. But essentially there's that, and then there's Panty and Stocking with Garter Belt. And that show is a little bit more risque. Not risque, but like it's a very weird show. But their focus for that one was they wanted to look at what American cartoons were being made at the time. So like My Life as a Teenage Robot, if you know what that is, the Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Laboratory, that geometric style.
Yeah, I remember all those.
Yeah, so basically their focus was to emphasize that, but they did it as Japanese artists, and so it translated to anime. And I think about Fooly Cooly and Panty and Stocking a lot, and I think about merging somewhere my art style being something in between both of those, and it comes from Gainax specifically. So I look to Gainax and I look to Fooly Cooly a lot for what I want to make when I think about what I want to make for a show.
Yeah, I think that's the cool thing about art is that, nobody's really making anything like actually original. Mm-hmm. It's like how many people could, how many, it's like we all are, even the most original things that we do are all just drawing from, because nobody has you were grabbing all these things and nobody grabs the exact same things you do. It's also like
that with all art too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like
I see that
every bit of art when it comes to visuals and stuff like, because when you're doing a style or something, you're always looking to like some other artists for a little bit of inspiration on how you want to do something. You can change little things, but those changes are what create more creativeness.
Yeah, that's how new genres are born.
Exactly. Yeah. So like once you step out a little bit, that's how you end up making new stuff. And so, do you want me to like, I went into Gynex, so like that's one of them. And sure. Obviously the rest of it, there's another one called Cyro Science Studios. So the thing they're known for right now is an anime called Dandadan. You might have heard of it. No, really? It was big around fall. Around fall. It's about a guy that likes aliens and a girl that likes ghosts, essentially. And then the guy ends up getting ghost powers, and the girl gets telekinetic alien powers, essentially. Kind of strange, but there's more to it. But essentially, Science Sorrow, the main guy that kind of started it, the main director of the first thing they made was his name is Masaaki Yuasa, and he made this anime called Kaiba, and that's like basically my second favorite, third favorite, fourth favorite. The other two are Trigun and Cowboy Bebop. If you know what those two are.
I know what Cowboy Bebop is.
Okay. Trigun. That's another good one. Yeah. Well, I don't have to tell you about that one, but that was a big impact for me last year. But Kaiba, it's something you have to watch twice in order to get all the nuances and everything that happen in it. And it's really amazing. And turns out that one of my favorite Adventure Time episodes was made by that guy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, so all the unique Adventure Time intros that you see in the Adventure Time show, the ones that are like specials and stuff, the special intros, those are all made by Science Sorrow. Yeah. And so that, plus a few scenes for right now, off the top of my head, I can remember a few scenes from Smiling Friends, and then a few more scenes from Adventure Time. Fiona and Cake actually are made by Science Sorrow, and then there's a few other stuff. But there's also another group that helped with Adventure Time every now and again called Small Boo Animations nowadays, and their original work was a webtoon called Bomb Man Piderman. That's also a big inspiration for me. And so that's a gist of kind of stuff
the styles that influence you.
Yeah, the art styles, animation stuff, like Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff Girls, stuff like that. I mentioned Penny Stocking being like that, but that's also a big inspiration, having that art style and focusing on that. I won't have something like that. I want it more dynamic and more human shaped. Mine,
because Dexter was shaped a little funny.
Oh, well, yeah, but like Dee Dee's head is a little bit like wide. But yeah,
but Dexter's mom.
I was gonna say,
come on now.
Dexter's mom is a little like,
yeah, come on now. Yeah, we ain't mad at it. I'm not mad at it.
Yeah, that X-Fairy episode.
Come on,
but yeah. No, that's stuff that I really enjoy looking at when I look for inspiration.
And see, I think you watch cartoons and animation different than like the average person, because you're looking quite a bit,
yeah, especially nowadays. Stuff. Yeah, I look at styles, and I look at that for shows in general. So I don't really look. So realistic shows that I get inspired by, there's probably only two, and it's more about the comedy than like the love I have for how they make them.
Realistic as far as animation?
No, realistic as in like actual like live action shows.
What are those?
So the two that I like to think about a lot are Top Gear and what it was eventually made into called The Grand Tour. If you know what Top Gear is. Yeah, that's a big show. And then Letterkenny.
Letterkenny,
so yeah. That's made by what's the word? It's not a skater, it's like hockey. It's made by a hockey player.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I love the comedy in that, and I love the comedy in Top Gear, even though some of it was staged in Top Gear a little bit. A lot of it's genuine, and it's just the way the guys bounce off each other is really dynamic. And I think about how to make characters realistic. That's something I really focus on. So when I look at Top Gear, I see that a lot. I kind of see my friends as like my main like guy group of friends, the twins, and then my friend Matt, and I see them as the guys from Top Gear. Kind of.
Yeah, it's crazy. We can kind of see our life through the lens of the stories that we watch and stuff. I think that we love movies and shows and books and stuff so much because I think that a lot of people live kind of like a boring life. I hate to say that, but
nowadays, I see that.
And then so we're like, oh, we got to go get this adventure, and so then we just like go binge someone else's adventure, and don't adventure. For
me, it's video games because like. Obviously the way I talk about TV shows and everything, I don't connect with them the same way everyone else does. I don't feel myself immersed like that anymore. But I feel that way when I play video games now. And
you play a lot of like open world games where you kind of get lost.
A lot of mine are like sandbox open world kind of games. Ark's like the quintessential like example I could always give. Basically, have you played? I guess can give a synopsis.
I'm not a video game.
Okay, awesome. Well, basically, it's a game that takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where people are. Spoilers alert, by the way. If you played Ark, don't listen right now. But spoiler alert, it's basically there's these arcs, these giant structures that are sent into space, and they simulate ecosystems. So basically with artificial gravity and stuff like that. And all these maps that you like play on are basically arcs that are sent up in space. And a lot of them have dinosaurs on them. And that's kind of like the plot.
Oh, cool.
So like you go out, you tame dinosaurs, and then you learn ways of making different tools and things like that. There's a lot of just trial and error. You could die a lot. And so it makes it tough. And then also learning how to tame certain dinosaurs can be very specific. And so it also takes a lot of time to gather resources in certain ways. So you have to gather a certain type of berry to usually make a narcotic that knocks them out. And then you have to make arrows that are tipped with that. And basically, that's how you typically tame them. You knock them out and then you feed them. And then eventually over a certain period of time, you'll tame them.
Yeah, they're like,
but they're in that vulnerable state too, by the way. So like when they're knocked out, you have to watch them. And sometimes there's a T-Rex around or something, and you may not be strong enough to actually kill it. So you have to watch for it and make sure to lead it away from what you're trying to tame, or else you're going to lose it. It's going to get eaten.
Yeah. I get immersed in movies and TV shows that same type of way. Yeah. And I like all the shows with the universes like built into them, like Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, when you have Star Wars. I love Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
I've seen everything that there is Star Wars.
I love seeing Star Wars. I do know quite a bit about some of the things about it, but like I never got a chance to watch it. That was another thing.
I know more political Star Wars stuff than actual human political stuff.
Fair.
I could tell you about the taxation of free trade routes that started episode 1.
I like that.
But no, I probably read like 100. I think it was last time I checked, it was 140 Star Wars books. So I've read almost all the Star Wars books. I've seen every show, every movie 100 times. And it's like, those are the universes. I like to get brought into those.
You would like some of the worlds that I make then, at least, especially the one that I'm, the big one, my magnum opus that I call. I don't know if we'll go into that because it's a whole thing to talk about.
Yeah.
But we might give it a bit.
Yeah. I get into like Lord of the Rings, especially because there's tons of lore.
You have a whole world and everything like that.
Yeah, Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
There's lots of. I need that type of show. Like even Star Trek for sure.
You can
Star
see
Trek's,
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get into that
like
for sure.
All my worlds. So like I have like about, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, about 4 or 5 different worlds that I've like kind of developed the ideas for. And so that started back when I was like around 16, 15. And most of them, they don't get too much time. I've still got to develop most of all of them. But
when you say worlds, you're built like, what do you think the end goal for them, like to be a show or to be animated?
They were different for each one. So my first one, I call it Venus. So basically it's set in some future where the world, basically Earth is no longer inhabited, and there's these floating cities in Venus that are like Renaissance age, essentially. And the main gimmick was, have you seen Soul Eater? Okay, well, if people have seen Soul Eater, apparently I made that exact thing. I didn't realize that until very recently when I started watching it.
Yeah,
it's this old anime basically, but and I'd never seen anything about it until very recently. But I basically made that exact thing, but set in a different setting. But basically, there's this you get this robot assistant that can change into weapons and such like that. And that was very simple. That was my first thing. Second one is basically a complete sci-fi world without humans. That's something I always focused on because I was always like, what is it like? What would it be like without humans? Partly because that's a big thing that we always focus on. And having human characters is something that everyone uses to help relate people to the story.
Yeah, that's the connection.
Yeah. And I was like, I want to do something outside that. So my second one was I call Figures. And so it's basically a bunch of aliens that I don't know if I go into this, but it had a larger focus on biblical stuff because I was a little bit more biblical at the time and I had my own thoughts about Christianity and things like that. I still do. And even though I've changed, I still want to focus on what Figures was supposed to be and what it meant originally. Even though my thoughts and opinions have kind of changed, I do want to adapt them a little bit because I have a much better understanding of what I see as what I see personally right now. But it used to be a little bit more focused on basically finding what is biblical. If aliens exist, what exactly does that mean for aliens? And the way I ran with that was every single planet somehow.
They going to hell.
No, it was really weird because every single planet kind of had oh shoot, I shouldn't be spoiling what it is because this one, I didn't tell you the original thing. So you were asking me what they were supposed to be, right? Yeah. So Venus, that was supposed to be a video game originally.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah. So that was a video game idea. So the robot assistant that transformed into different weapons. So you could change your class or something like that. And you could harness certain powers and things like that. And I thought that was a good idea for a video game. It wasn't something I was always planning on developing because it's just so, it was very me. It was very me when I was 15 or 16. And as much as I like it and I think that it's very important, it's not something I really want to go any further into because I have Figures and I have the bigger one, the magnum opus that I really like working on. Figures was going to be a visual novel. So a lot of text with intermittent pictures somewhere in between each one. So kind of get a visual of what the characters looked like because they weren't supposed to be human or anything. And they have their own flaws and things like that. And it was a visual novel.
I like having some type of visual character.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think one thing that AI is going to do is going to be able to do something like that. A lot of these books that don't really have.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I think that AI is going to get so cool one day that you're going to be able to be all right, make me Lord of the Rings in the 80s.
Ooh,
style and the thing just be able to make, and that'll be later when it's super powerful. You know what I'm saying? When it's our overload
when it looks,
stuff.
So it actually doesn't sound weird and looks cool.
Yeah. I think that'll be and then there'll be books that don't have a movie, and then you'll be hey, make me a movie or make me a scene out of this, and then you'll be able to see stuff you've never seen. Because
that's a good idea.
I read a lot of books, and sometimes I'm damn, I wonder what because if you're just breezing over something,
there's also the way I visualize it because I read through the entire first book of Doom right before it came out. And the way I imagined it, I'm so stuck on how I imagined how Doom looked in my own mind that I don't like how the movie did it.
Yeah.
Especially certain aspects. I imagined certain characters when I was reading it. I imagined certain characters as certain fictional characters that I had seen before or something like that. I think I imagined Paul, the main guy, as before he was given a description of having black hair or something like that. I can't remember if there was a description about that, but I imagined him as young Anakin Skywalker, I think.
Oh,
blonde and everything. I think that's exactly how I
young, the original actor for Anakin.
Yeah, from exactly. Yeah. That's kind of how I imagined Paul. And then I imagined the Gurney Halleck. I imagined him as like a different character from like that Kaiba series that I mentioned.
Yeah.
Completely visual difference, but like I molded it all together in my own mind.
Anytime you take a book and you make it a show or a movie, you always, like, a lot of people struggle with that. The ones that actually, because they're like, people want a visual, but then if it doesn't line up with that, then they're always go, well, the book is better. You hear that all the time. The book is better.
My big thing that I hated was the Harkonnen, the Baron. I don't remember how it looked. I'm pretty sure he looked like crap, but essentially I imagined this really big dude. And what we got, I'm pretty sure, just was not.
That was the head.
That's
guy.
Like bad guy. Basically. Yeah.
So look, I almost made it through Dune 1, and now I've sworn off Dune, the books, because I was listening to the audiobook, and it was like, okay, so I fell asleep at the wheel. And almost died. And I blame Dune to this day. The most boring ass Dune 1 book almost killed. Let me look at the camera. Let me have a moment here. The Dune book almost killed me. I was like 20 chapters in, and I was driving a work truck, and I got tired, and I should have pulled over. But Dune literally put me in a coma, and I almost died. Then I stopped. I never finished the book.
I believe it. Well, here's the thing. The version I had was 900 pages long. I'm so surprised that I got through all of that.
I was listening to the audiobook, and it was so boring.
It was during a time when I didn't get my phone. Around that time, like, I got kicked out of school and I got my phone taken away. So I had a little bit more free time to really just get that book finished. And it was nice.
You know, most people, when they get kicked out of school, they don't go read books. But
well, it was like, so the way it happened was, I guess, do you want to go into the story about how I grew up?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, well, so essentially, I grew up going to Red Lick for a long while. And around sixth grade, I hadn't really made any friends. I mean, one friend I had was like my neighbor. And I didn't really hang out with him. They never put me in a class with them. And in post, that was probably actually intentional, because that's something they do is if you're friends with somebody, they put you in separate classes to get you to start making new friends. Thing is that works for some kids, doesn't work for all kids. And so that ended up making me never have any friends over the course of going to school there. And also, like, it keeps kids, it would also technically keep kids from talking to friends and chatting, which really, really hurt me, because I was a very introverted kid up until I basically I moved to a private school called Veritas. I wore the shirt today. Veritas Academy.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. Well, it was a small one. It got closed down though when I was in 10th grade. That was during COVID basically. And so it closed down and I moved to Trinity for 2 months. And they were going through, I'm not going to say what happened the year before, but something big happened the year before. And they were kind of not wanting any more bad press, essentially. And I'm this rebellious kid that went out to things I did. I'll name all of them. But the first one was I went out to my car without asking. It was a very normal thing for me to go out to a car back when I was at Veritas, because it was a very small school, and go get like a change of clothes when I needed to. I figured there was not going to be any issue. Apparently they were really, really upset about that. And that was strike one. Strike two, I think, was wearing painted pants, not like the painted pants I have now, but just like a few dabs of paint, basically. And I didn't have enough pants to like really circulate them every day, unless I wore the painted pants, because that just kind of started being a new thing. And they didn't like that, I think. I don't know if that was exactly what it was, but it was probably that. And then the last one was I made a TikTok in class without, you're not supposed to film in class, obviously. And the TikTok was a video of me pulling down my pants in class.
Oh no.
Here's the thing. I was wearing 2 pairs of pants. So like, I really wasn't pulling down my pants, but it looks like I'm pulling down my pants.
Yeah. And that was it.
Yeah. And so I did that. I posted it and it got like 1,000 views. And apparently that was big news or something to some girls. And they mentioned it the next day and the principal overheard that. And she's like, well, I'm done with this kid. Yeah. And so she talks to me, tells me like, oh, we're going to discuss if you're going to get withdrawn or not. And so I leave. And the second day, off school premises. They're like, yeah, he's withdraw him or else we're kicking him out. And so that gave me like time before I started my GED thing. And that's why I had so much time reading.
I got kicked out of Trinity.
Really?
I went there for like 3 months. This was like a last ditch effort to like save me from, I'd already gotten in trouble other places. And so like they were like, all right, we'll slide them in Trinity and see if that'll help. I got caught selling weed at a basketball game.
Oh, well, it's an in-groupie school is the thing. Yeah. If you're not in, you're out. So that's kind of where it was for me.
Yeah, I never fit in there. That was just...
trust me. Like, some people are
I still talk to a couple of the people there from this day, like that I graduated, that were in my class or whatever, but you know, like people I played basketball with, because I was there for
There's one guy that I still talk to that's from, that was originally from there. Or actually, there's a few of them, but like one of them is... twins I mentioned, like one of my best friends, it's their cousin. And so like kind of obvious.
Yeah, I didn't make it there long. That was back when they were tucking shirts in and
when they're a little bit more strict and everything. Yeah, mine was during COVID.
As soon as I showed up, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get kicked out of here.
Yeah, it's kind of just, I don't like them. I didn't like them.
No, that wasn't for me. And I went right back to public school where I belong. Then right back to AAP where I belong.
Yeah. And then, so what ended up happening for me is I had a few months of hiatus. I played Ark quite a bit during that time, but I was younger back then. And that's when I started writing too. I did start writing around that time, and I read Dune. And I was still doing figures at that point, writing a little bit about that, the world and everything. But around the time I got my GED, I started writing kind of the start of the stuff for the magnum opus, I think. But it was a different thing back then. I'm still leading up to that point, obviously, but essentially, I got my GED. It took me 3 months, and I was done because I was already I was smart, and I was smart because I watched a lot of YouTube, and
you can get so smart off YouTube, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Or dumb off YouTube, depending on what you click.
A lot of my stuff eventually, so like obviously a lot of it when I started was junk. What we would call brain rot nowadays. It wasn't called brain rot now back then, but like. Brain rot content was like the first thing for the first year. And then it slowly started getting more and more educational and less focus on like kind of fitting in. And it kind of just me liking what I liked. And a lot of that educational stuff just helped me click in. I finally understood a lot more stuff than I ever did before going to private school or going to being in my house and not having a lot of exposure to everything. It changed me. The YouTube changed. Like going to private school, watching YouTube, that's probably one of the most key things that makes me who I am. And I hate, the YouTube part, I don't hate saying it, but like, it's crazy to think about that YouTube had such a big positive impact on my life.
Yeah, I call it YouTube University. Yeah. That's how I learned like almost every skill I know has come from a bunch of dudes on YouTube. All the things
with a camera. I know about how to work with cars, how engines work, how all that stuff works inside a car. It all comes from YouTube. Yeah. And I hate saying that I know more than my dad. I don't know more than my dad does about cars by hand, but I do know why the engine works. I know how you can make an engine, how types. I know the specifics, and that's kind of always how I've learned. Learn the most basic stuff, then learn up from there. Learn why things work before getting a general picture, and that has helped me immensely with how I've grown, because I grew up with ADHD and a little bit of autism, and somehow I always knew that learning that basal information would eventually start stacking, and now I'm where I am, and I don't really need to be taught nearly as much as I used to.
Yeah, I was talking to a teacher one time in here, and he was like, that's how you want knowledge to be. It's like it just kind of stacks up on it, and you just every day you're learning off of what you learned the day before. Yeah.
One big thing I say when I work as an artist, and so especially with fine arts and everything, but one of the biggest things I like to say to people when I make quotes and stuff like that, I tell people I'm a jack of all trades, and basically you can say a jack of all trades is a master of none, but that's only part of the phrase. The full phrase is a jack of all trades is a master of none, but is oftentimes better than a master of one. And I think about that phrase a whole lot.
People say that first part a lot, but you don't hear that second part.
That second part. And so I reflect that second part to the T, because like the amount of stuff I can tell you and how things work, how things are supposed to work, just from knowing how everything else works, crazy. And it helps me in so many different ways that I can't even imagine. Like it just every single day, it's always showing that's always showing its effect. And so I'm always saying that.
Yeah, you got to learn. I know I've got my hands on a little bit of everything.
Exactly.
Being able to do audio, being able to podcast, being able to do the video, being able to do, there's a lot of stuff. And it's all this, like, so this right here is like the culmination of a bunch of different random side missions, basically. And now I can do a full audio video podcast, like by myself.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of just how it kind of forms. Cause like for me, doing the oil paintings is what started. So that's a very specific medium, oil paintings. And so that's how I started out. We're lucky to have it actually, because usually nowadays schools just do acrylic and because it's safe. Well, actually it's safe. Well, actually, safe. It's a way of saying it. But oil painting is a little bit more dangerous to use because it's a little bit toxic. So you have to handle it a little bit more properly. It's that and the terpenoid the paint thinner that you use can be a little, there's safer versions of it. And that's what we use. But like, you have to be careful with that. And you don't just use water and acrylic. And that's a whole thing. But basically, I liked it because it took longer to dry. But then Darlene started introducing me to murals and stuff. And so that was a whole different range of learning how to paint and everything. It's a different thing because it's bigger, it's wider. You need to think about not just, it's a much more bigger focus on what it's going to look like from very far away, more than what all the details and what the style is that you're putting into it. It's much more about the visual effect from, like just when we were painting the Otis Williams mural near the Perot. What Darlene always told me, it's always about it's about paying for the cheap seats. I remember that phrase all the time. It's about paying for the cheap seats, which means you're not. At the game, when you're paying for the cheap seats, you're paying for the seats in the back.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, the seats from far away, because that's what matters, is the people that are going to see it from far away. And they're not going to look at the details and
people are going to go up to the wall and look at a mural.
And examine and see exactly what it's looking like. You're going to
when you drive by it,
you're going to drive by it and think it's cool. And then that's it. You're going to park in the parking lot, you're going to look at it, and then you're going to go into the Perot. That's it.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, and that's another point
that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And I think about that too.
Like when it comes to ideas, it's just a concept that like Joe Rogan has talked about a lot. Like the ideas coming from somewhere. Like, do you think that they all come from inside us? Like when I say that, it's okay. So like when I write music and when I'm writing, somehow I know where I'm heading.
Yeah.
As I'm writing like a verse.
You kind of get a feeling.
And it's like, is that just from doing this a bunch? Is this repetition, or is this like some kind of other
get a flow state?
Yeah, flow state type deal.
Yeah. No, for me, it's definitely for art. Sometimes it's definitely like that. It depends on what it is specifically. Because when I don't know what to do, I can stagnate and I can stop. And that's been a big issue with my paintings. Every once in a while is I don't know what I'm doing sometimes when I get to a certain point, and then I basically freeze and I get stuck. And so like with some of the murals that I've worked on that are my own, I've gotten really stuck on some of the things that I was doing, and it causes me to like take way more time than I need to in order to get things done. But sometimes like when I'm writing or something, I know how to talk. I know how I want to talk, and I know how I want something to be said. Basically, I have a much better grasp on that than I do with painting. And so a lot of the things that I end up saying kind of just end up flowing out perfectly, like perfectly as I can imagine them. Not to say that I got good punctuation or it's a good sentence overall, but it works well in my own space. And obviously I can get ChatGPT nowadays to kind of correct all that. But
yeah, that's the new thing. You can just put things through GPT.
It's something that I do need help with, because like, don't want someone critiquing my work. Last time I had someone critiquing my a chapter that I wrote. He ended up like saying all the spelling checks and every single like little mistake, and some of them were intentional. And he's just like, yeah, no, this is written badly. And I'm like, thanks, man.
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot of good ideas, and I feel like even like when I like expressing thoughts, okay, I feel like I'm decent at expressing like my thoughts or something, but punctuation and all that stuff are absolutely not there. So to run it through GPT just to get it, exactly. Like don't even change nothing, just make it like grammatically right. So somebody doesn't like miss the whole point of what I'm saying because I didn't put a comma. Like I don't want them to feel like that.
Yeah.
But I also don't want it to look like an English professor wrote it because then you're not.
Yeah. Because most people, that's part of a style.
Right.
So like when I talked about doing art and everything and you talk about genres and everything, there's a certain way you need to write it and a certain way you want to write it. So like you're going to have your own tendencies for like word choice and ways you like with music, it's ways you rhyme. One of my heroes is his name is he goes by Mr. J Medeiros on Spotify, but he's a spectacular rapper, absolutely immaculate. But the way he rhymes sometimes is very simple. He's rhymed with I quite a few times, but that's intentional, and you make sure to reference that because that's kind of a messed up way of rhyming. You're not supposed to rhyme with the word I. Because that's kind of
like cheating, yeah.
Well, yeah, exactly.
But there's 3 different forms of I, or at least 2.
Well,
right?
you're saying when you're using I as a you, like yourself,
yeah.
And there's a few more lines like that I would try to remember, but they seem weak. But he's aware of that weakness,
right? Well, there's these rules, right? And I talk about this a lot especially when I'm teaching people how to write or teaching people how to record. Like when I'm teaching people how to do anything that I'm good at, what I've realized is that like when it comes to this stuff, like music, there isn't really any actual solid rules.
Oh yeah, no.
So like there's at the beginning you do learn these rules in order to do things that correctly, and then as you get better, you learn to break those rules in a creative way.
Yeah, I'm starting to learn that finally. So like for me, with my paintings and everything, I've always been more about trying to figure out how to make it look right. And so I told you I freeze when I like don't know how to do it. And so one thing that artists always do is there's a point in time, usually when they're younger than me, they start developing styles or certain ways that they paint and they draw and come up like how to draw water. They have steps for how to do it and they remember them. Or like usually it's steps from how the face works. And this is something I already always did. And I never fully grasped that I did this until like just recently. But basically there's a certain way you make a face, certain way you draw the chin, certain way like proportions for the body that you prefer. One of my best friends, I call her my sister, Rachel, she has a way of drawing characters that are really tall, and that's part of her style, essentially.
Right.
And that's a style. That's a way of doing your work, and you flow out of that, but like you have a certain way of doing it. And it works with your the writing and everything too.
Yeah, it's like you learning to break the original rules in your own way, and that's how you kind of make your own thing. Yeah,
that's something I did try and focus on was experimenting. That was a big thing for me whenever I did painting. So like my first one, it was the only example of that not being the case. I was trying to do everything just normal, as typically as I could. And then the next one I stepped up, I was like, okay, I want to try doing line art. So I did, I had a Sharpie at the end of the day that I ended up using as a outline for all the colors and everything. And then the next one, these also kept getting bigger. And then eventually I got to the next semester and my big jump happened. I painted a TV. So I painted directly onto a TV and left certain areas not painted. So when you turn the TV on, they'd be static in the void.
Wow.
Yeah. And it looks incredible. At least when it's turned off, you can really notice it. But that was a big step. Experimenting, trying to paint on a TV, see how that worked. Then there was I wanted to make a piece that was interactive. So my teacher wanted us to paint a door. And so what I had in mind was the panels in the door. So, you know, the one that you have in there's 6 panels on that door right there. There were 2 on the door that I had. I cut them out and I was going to be able to spin them. So that way you could kind of interact with the piece. And that interaction is I haven't been able to fully test it, but I think that would be a huge way of just getting people to remember what I do as an artist, like what specific things I like, getting someone to remember a piece.
Right.
Because that is one way of just making your name so much more well-known. Have you heard of Mr. Beast talk about the purple cow? No.
That's one of the concepts that's really been sticking with me lately is, so if you're driving down the road and you see a regular cow, especially here, you would just keep driving.
Exactly.
But if you were driving down the road and you saw a purple cow, you would pull over. You would take pictures. And it's like, how can you make stuff today that is like a purple cow? Like, what would make you stop? What would make them?
Have you seen me?
Yeah, I'm looking at you.
Yeah. You're looking at me, but
yeah,
did you see my jacket?
Yeah.
And so like, that's partly the intent, that purple cow idea.
Yeah.
So part of the idea for keeping the jacket on a lot of the time is partly for the fact when I go out to the bar, I have it on, and people are immediately like, that's weird. My mom always says that, oh no, it looks weird. It's gross. It's disgusting. Yeah. But the thing is that it doesn't look like I do this for a hobby. I keep telling her that. That's kind of what I say. I don't look like I do this for a hobby. I look like I do this for my job. And so people are immediately like, hey, do you like, what's up with the painted jacket? Or like, that painted jacket's really cool. And I'm like, thanks. Yeah, I'm a painter from town. And they're like, whoa, really? And like that starts a conversation. It's so out of the norm. And it's not just that. Originally, the biggest thing that stuck out was, partly a curious satchel with me, but also I have a speaker with me and I always have it on in public nearly. And so aside from being tall, aside from being like kind of...
What are you about, 6'2", 6'3"?
6'4", actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, especially with shoes on. But
I'm 5'11" and 3/4. 6 in boots.
Essentially going out, being that, having the speaker on, people look at me, they're like, then they remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like making a way for you're making people stop, making people think. Yeah,
it's taking their mind.
Yeah,
too. And recently, the painted jacket going out in public and just being there multiple times, that has really started cementing my look to people. And so, like they see me with a jacket. That's just absolutely part of the brand.
Yeah,
yeah,
I love that. Let's cut it short today, and I want to get you on again, man.
Oh, okay. And
that way this one doesn't go too long because I've been experimenting with times.
Okay.
And once they go past like
we need to do this again.
Yeah.
Trust me. We still need to do, okay. If we don't do one next time, we need to do that speculative biology thing or something.
Yeah. Let's do that.
I will totally chat about that for a long while.
Yeah. Let's do that. That way these don't get too long because I've been, like I said, I've been experimenting with times and figuring out what actually works. And once we get to a certain time, I'm like, it's like, it's almost too long. Like I've done the 3-hour ones. They don't necessarily, the extra time doesn't necessarily.
No, it does not necessarily mean no.
Yeah. So I'm going to have you back. Okay. Anything else you want to say for today?
Anything we want to talk about or
just like any last statements?
We're almost done with the window mural over at Fuzzy's Tacos.
The Sharks.
Yes, the Sharks.
Yes, I've seen them.
You can pull up a photo or something. Maybe I'll send you something. But essentially, I've got a shark mural over at a new Fuzzy's Tacos on North Kings Highway and near Interstate 30. It's north of Nash, essentially, where the new Quick Trip was. It's near where the new Quick Trip was, basically opposite inverted end, other side where the Texas Smokehouse is. Y'all should go look at that. It'll be done today.
Oh, you'll finish it today?
That's what I'm aiming for. I'm really hoping. That's what I'm doing right now. Once we're done cutting.
Nice.
But
yeah.
Go check it out. Go check them out because they're trying to get business, and it's I'm here to partly advertise. They need people.
Yeah. They need people to go eat there, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I don't think it's owned by the same people. So
is the other Fuzzies?
Because there's the other one that's like on State Line.
Right. Yeah,
but I don't think it's owned by the same people. So.
Okay. Yeah. We'll go out to Fuzzy's Taco on Nash.
Yeah.
There you have it.
It's got good food.
Yeah.
And also they have car meats. By the way, they got car meats. If you're a car guy, they have car meats. At least on Fridays, I know that. You could go ask and see what other days they have them on. But
in the parking lot?
Yeah.
By the Tesla chargers?
Yeah, by the Tesla chargers. Yeah, no, they do. Pretty much every Friday as far as I know.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's good.
And they encourage that because a lot of people are like, get out of our parking lot.
Yeah, I know the guy that runs them, or like one of the guys that runs them, his name's Jonathan. Good, cool guy.
Yeah.
Cool stuff, by the way. The whole car meet.
Awesome, man.
If you're into that.
Woo! We appreciate you tapping in, man. It's been another episode of the Teel podcast. Thank you again for coming, man. It's been a good time, and I'll have you back.
Yeah, it's no big problem at all.
Yeah, dude, this is cool. And definitely before you leave, before you move, where you moved to another continent, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I'll have you back on. Y'all for the channel, like, share, subscribe, do all that cool stuff. You're listening on Spotify. Please listen to at least just one episode and rate the show. If you give me a 5-star rating, that helps so much. That'll show me to more people. And I'm just trying to make more cool content, have more cool guests. And y'all have a blessed day. We're out, man.